So SIFCo, as a community forest, has been very focused in the past several years on wildfire mitigation, and part of that is just looking at the whole valley and trying to create more wildfire resilient communities. We are working in collaboration with the three villages of Slocan, Silverton, and New Denver, delivering the Slocan Valley Wildfire Resiliency Program. The Silverton Firehall Wildfire Resiliency Garden not only mitigates the wildfire hazards in and around the Silverton Firehall, but also serves as this educational tool for the community. It's like how they can better mitigate wildfire risk on their property while also creating a beautiful landscape design. So we really want it to be a space that brings in the community members to interact with it, to ask questions, and to look at how things can be designed beautifully, but also reduce your wildfire risk. The Silverton Firehall Wildfire Resiliency Garden builds upon the wildfire mitigation work that was conducted on the Silverton Firehall. So the building was assessed for wildfire hazard, and all those hazards were addressed through building materials, replacing vinyl siding with metal, and addressing roofline gaps and cracks. And then working our way out from there, we were applying the Fire Smart Home Ignition zones. So in the non-combustible zone, we created a 1.5 meter non-combustible space from the building and the garden by installing a cement walkway. And then in zone 1, we were looking at using non-combustible rock mulches in this area and utilizing fire-resistant plants. And then stepping further out from the Silverton Firehall in zone 2, we used a different variety of plant species that are better suited to this zone, as it's moving further out from the structure and poses less of a hazard directly to the structure. So what does it mean to have a wildfire resilient garden? Well, the goal with this is to create a garden that is more adapted to climate change and to wildfires. So incorporating those xeriscaping practices, adding ecological value, and looking at a lower maintenance space serves to also be a better suited landscape design to our changing climate. So we were really fortunate to actually get Ray Nichols to design it. He's a very experienced, well-known landscaper in the area. So I worked with him closely with plant selection and also the design and layout of the garden. We stayed away from more flammable plants such as junipers, conifers, and tall ornamental grasses in this garden, and utilized plants that possessed the fire-resistant attributes found in the Fire Smart Landscaping Guide. We assess plants for, do they attract pollinators? Do they attract birds? Are they drought tolerant? What their water usage is? And are they deer resistant? So throughout the garden there is plant ID tags for all the plants that were used with their common and Latin name, their water usage, and what attributes these plants possess. So residents and the public can, walk through this space and get lots of different ideas about, what does it mean to have a fire-resistant or wildfire-resilient landscape design, and what kind of plants they could utilize in those spaces.
My name is Ray Nichols. I'm a landscape designer, and I also do installation and maintenance. We're in Silverton now near the Fire Hall, and we're looking at a garden that's designed for being fire smart, drought tolerant, and deer resistant. So the construction is done with, we'll talk about the rocks. These are gneiss rocks. And by gneiss I mean it looks like gneiss, G-N-E-I-S-S, but it's pronounced gneiss. So these are gneiss rocks. And rather than digging into the ground, we decided to make raised beds, and we're using the rock for that because the rock doesn't rot. It's there forever and it doesn't burn at all. So we have these raised beds on this flat ground here, and we have the gardens installed in that. And I worked with Chris Fox. He's a great machine operator. He's the one that helped me place all these rocks. And you can see we tried to get some interesting fits so that it looks like people had real intent when they were designing this garden. They took some time and tried to do a good job doing the installation. So within the gardens itself, there's it's filled up with sand, and then we have about 1 foot to 8 inches of topsoil on top. And then because it's hard to make really good soil here, although Stuart Nelson did a great job, I'm quite pleased with his product, we put manure and fertilizer on top, and then I work that in. So let's just wander around the garden, just talk about the plants. So everything here is shrubbery, evergreen, or perennials. There's going to be no annuals in here. So this is a geranium, and generally it tends to be deer resistant, and it's got a long blooming period. It's one of the best perennial geraniums around, and oftentimes you can get a second bloom on them. And then these are heathers, and they're actually quite drought tolerant. And usually I try to put a lot of evergreen into the garden, but because we didn't want to have needled evergreens because of the fire hazard, we're using the heathers and boxwoods for our greenery. And these are spring bloomers, so again we try to have color from spring right until fall. Then we have the echinacea, again a very drought tolerant, deer resistant plant. And then we go into the grasses. Now the grasses are great. If you want a plant that's all 3 characteristics, the grasses have it. We didn't go for the big, the huge grasses because of the fire hazard in them. We went for all the smaller grasses and the thinner ones, the ones that weren't quite so thick. Now roses are not exactly deer resistant, but because it being a shrub, they're quite drought tolerant. And but again, it's a public garden, so I wanted some good color in the gardens. And then we have the flowering shrubs. We've got the hydrangea paniculata, and they're great. They bloom all summer right into the fall. And we have firelight, which starts out white and then turns pink quite early. And then we have limelight, which stays white quite long. The garden is going to be mulched. Generally, I don't use a lot of rock mulch in my landscapes, but it certainly is a really good fire-resistant mulch for sure. And because the rock mulch is it doesn't give nutrients to the gardens like the wood mulch does as it rots down. So I've chosen tougher plants to go in this rock area. But we've chosen plants that also have, there's berberis and armelinia grass. So we have interesting color just in the leaves alone, not alone with the flowers. And always the contrast between the gold and the purple is always nice. So I hope this garden becomes a real focal point for the village of Silverton. They don't have a little community center, and I think it'll be a great spot. And eventually they can add on to the whole concept of the village town center. There can be a gazebo there where people can come and play music. So it can just, from this little beginning, it can expand to be a real center for the community and a real source of pride for the community as well too.
It was a pleasure to work with Ray. He did an amazing job. The end result has turned out beyond my expectations. It's beautiful space, and I just can't wait to see how this garden evolves over time, and I'm really happy to be a part of it and working with the villages in creating this beautiful space for the community. So I think it's going to be really cool.